The silence was deafening. The room went dead silent. She gave him the silent treatment. Did you notice how the word silence changes the meaning of each sentence? Welcome back to the Learn English podcast, the podcast teaching English in context so you can learn naturally. In today's episode, we're going to give you English idioms that can boost your fluency. Specifically, we're going to look at idioms that use the word silence and see how native speakers use them to show emotion, disagreement, and even respect. These idioms might sound similar, but you'll see that they have very different meanings. If you want to better understand native speakers and elevate your English vocabulary, follow along because we're about to begin. To start, let's be clear about what silence literally means before we start using it in idioms. Silence means there is no sound, no talking, and no noise. I want you to keep that definition in mind as we go through these phrases so you can hear how the meaning changes. When you understand the intent, which means the idea behind the words, it becomes easier to remember and to use these idioms yourself. So our first idiom is dead silence. Dead silence means complete silence. Think of when something or someone is dead. They aren't making any noise and they aren't moving or reacting in any way. We use this idiom to describe when people who were talking and making noise stop. This usually is when something surprising or serious happens.
For example, the Winter Olympics just recently occurred earlier this year, and in those Olympics, there was a skier named Lindsey Vonn. And she had retired before years ago, but she decided to come back and try to win an Olympic medal at these last Olympics. When she was skiing in the downhill event, she had a horrible crash. And she really injured her leg. She injured her leg very severely. There is a crowd at the bottom of the downhill event that usually cheers on the skiers. But when she crashed and people realized how bad the crash was, the crowd went dead silent, which meant that while the medical team was working on Lindsey Vonn and trying to get her off the mountain, there was no sound being made by the crowd.
Our next idiom is silence is deafening. Deafening means extremely loud. For example, a loud concert can be deafening. Now you might be wondering how silence can be deafening if the absence of noise is silence. But in this idiom, silence isn't loud because of the sound, it's loud because of what the silence means. Silence is deafening is used when you are expecting a response, but you don't get it. People use it when the silence itself is sending a message, even though no words are spoken. It usually means the situation is uncomfortable, tense, or emotionally charged. So the silence of someone not answering you has a lot of emotional weight behind it. Talking about my students, there have been times when I was teaching them and I thought everything was going well. It seemed like they really understood the material and they were really enjoying the lesson. But then when I asked the class a question to test their knowledge, no one responded. I was expecting them to answer correctly or at least try, but they didn't say anything. But even in this situation, I still got feedback because I realized that my students didn't understand the material like I thought they did. And as a teacher, that's uncomfortable, disappointing, maybe even a little frustrating. All of those words are emotionally charged words, which is why this idiom fits this situation. I can say that this silence was deafening when I asked my class a question. Another example would be if you have a partner, someone you are dating or married to. Let's say you live with them and then one night they just don't come home. They show up the next day and you ask them, "Where were you last night?" And instead of answering you, they just stare at you and don't say anything. Ooh, that silence is deafening. This is very similar to the idiom a loaded silence. A loaded silence is when no one is speaking, but there is strong emotion in the room. Loaded means full of something. So you can have a loaded car if you have a lot of things in your car that you are transporting. Loaded might also mean that something is ready to explode. Think of a loaded gun. That means the gun is ready to be used, ready to be fired. So a loaded silence is full of emotion like anger, sadness, or disappointment. We use this idiom when there is tension or conflict between people. Something important hasn't been said between them yet, but there is a sense that the situation could change at any moment. This is very much like the moment in a movie when two characters stare at each other in silence and you feel that something big is going to happen. Maybe there's going to be a big explosion or a reveal or a plot twist. Something important is just about to happen. Going back to the hypothetical couple who are fighting after one of them didn't come home the night before, if they are in the same house but not talking to each other, you would call that a loaded silence. Anyone watching can tell that there is something wrong, even though nothing is being said. That's why this idiom works because the situation could change at any moment, and it probably is going to be very uncomfortable and be a very big argument. Now, if one of the people in that couple refuses to speak to the other for an extended period of time, we can use the phrase silent treatment. The silent treatment is used when someone chooses not to speak to another person on purpose. People use this phrase when silence is being used to show anger or to punish someone. And it happens between people who are close, like family members or partners, because if you refuse to talk to a stranger, they aren't going to notice or recognize that you are ignoring them. They don't know you. But if it's someone you're close to who is expecting you to talk to them, not talking to them is a form of punishment. So let's say that one of the people in a relationship does not talk to the other partner for a few days. We could say that they are giving their partner the silent treatment. This kind of silence is meant to make the other person feel bad or uncomfortable, even though no words are spoken. For example, I know someone who did not talk to her sister for an entire year after they had a bad fight. And they lived in the same house together. They saw each other every single day for a year and did not speak to each other. That's definitely the silent treatment. This is different from an awkward silence. The word awkward also means uncomfortable, but usually in a socially strange or odd way. An awkward silence is used when a conversation stops and no one knows what to say. This might have happened to you if you've ever met a stranger, maybe at a party or at your work. You introduce yourself, do a little small talk, and then you don't know what else to say. Both of you look down, maybe you take out your phone. No one really knows what to say next, and you just stand awkwardly next to each other. I know that's happened to me before. That quiet moment when you don't know what to say is called an awkward silence. So this phrase is used when everyone feels a little uneasy or uncomfortable, but nothing is seriously wrong. No one is trying to punish anyone. People aren't mad at each other. They're just trying to think about what to say next and are feeling a little bit weird or uncool. Now let's look at when silence has a more respectful meaning. A moment of silence is a short time when everyone stays quiet to show respect. People use this phrase to honor someone, usually after a person has died or during an important event. For example, at awards ceremonies like the Grammys or the Oscars, they usually have an in memoriam section where they show pictures of the people in the entertainment industry who died that year. And you might hear someone say, "Let's observe a moment of silence." During that time, everyone stops talking and stays quiet. This silence is planned and is meant to show respect. In this case, the respect would be for the people who died that year. You might also hear this get called a respectful silence. A respectful silence means that people stay quiet to show respect. This is usually when someone is speaking like a teacher in a classroom or when something important is happening, like a moment of silence. This kind of silence feels calm and serious. It is not uncomfortable or awkward. Now let's move into more abstract meanings. Our next idiom is silence implies consent. The word consent means to give permission or to agree with something. Silence implies consent means that people do not speak, and that is taken as agreement for something. People use this phrase in meetings, decisions, or group situations when no one speaks to object. For example, someone might say, if no one disagrees, we'll move forward with the meeting. If no one speaks and there's silence, everyone is seen as agreeing to that condition. This sounds very similar to our last idiom, but I want you to listen and see if you can hear the difference. The idiom is silence is complicity. Complicity means shared responsibility for something, and it's usually something wrong. Silence is complicity means that staying quiet about something wrong can make a person partly responsible for that action. This phrase is serious and strong because it connects silence with responsibility for an injustice. People use this phrase when someone sees a problem or injustice but chooses not to speak up. For example, let's say you are at school and you see some students bullying a younger student, like something out of a teen movie. You don't say anything or try to stop it, and other people might look at you and say, your silence is complicity. You aren't the one doing the bullying, you aren't hurting anyone directly, but by remaining silent, you became part of that negative action. I did an episode about Dr. Martin Luther King in January, and one of my favorite quotes from him is, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." And that idea of having a responsibility to speak out when you see something wrong is what this idiom is saying. Were any of these idioms new to you? Please let me know in the comments which one you learned today. And if this episode felt a little confusing at times, don't worry, that's completely normal. Idioms can be tricky because the meaning is not always obvious from the words. You're not supposed to understand everything the first time you hear it. The goal is to become more familiar with these expressions so that when you hear them again in real life, they sound natural instead of strange. Each time you hear them, your brain learns a little bit more and you get a little bit closer to fluency and sounding like a native speaker. You can also check the description of this episode for helpful links and the vocabulary list of the idioms that we covered today. Reading them, listening again, and reviewing them later will help you remember them more easily. This kind of repetition is one of the best ways to build your English vocabulary. It helps you feel more confident and it helps you sound more natural when you speak in English. If this episode helped you, please consider leaving us a review or sharing the show. You can also follow us on social media or go to our website, learnenglishpod.com. And remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss our next episode when it comes out next week. Until then, keep learning English.